Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're joined by a wonderful celebrity that will take us back to the 1970s when the first African-American television series called Good Times aired. It was a sitcom that still remains popular nationwide today in syndication, and I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest who played Thelma Evans in Good Times, BerNadette Stanis. BerNadette, how are you doing today?
Fine. How are you?
Oh, we were doing excited. You know, once you get over the little glitches of things here and you get things rolling, you know how television and radio and all that works. Tell us how this all started for you.
I do know how it works, yeah.
Now, tell us how this all started for you, how you came to be on Good Times and what you're up to these days.
Okay. Well, you know, it started way back in the day. I was in a beauty pageant, actually, and there was a manager there at the time when I was on that stage, and they invited me to come to the audition for the show, and I went up there to CBS, and that's how it all started.
Now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying that's how it all started, and it landed me, you know, on that wonderful show that actually changed my whole life.
Now, it's really interesting when this show came out because it showcased a life that I don't think too many Americans were really familiar with, which was the inner city of Chicago, the ghetto, so to speak. I know JJ always talked about living in the ghetto kind of a thing.
Yeah. Well, you're right. It exposed to the world another side of America, okay? Mm-hmm. We were an African-American family, an American family, that lived on the other side of the tracks, meaning that this is the way it was in the projects. And I believe that Cabrini Green was the staple, actually, to say in all projects, this is how we live in America. And it was very similar to the one in Brownsville, where I came from, in Brooklyn, New York. So it was a real life situation of how most families at that time lived in the projects. And because you are in the projects and you're a poor family does not mean you're less of a human being or that you're less intelligent or less handsome or beautiful or whatever. It just means that for your particular family, you happen to live in the projects because you guys are poor. Mm-hmm. So poor doesn't mean bad. It just means, you know, poor.
Well, what was fascinating, just to let you know about this, is that at the time that show was out, I was actually living in Wilmington, California. And this was around 1973, 74, and being a Caucasian, mostly, living in a mostly minority neighborhood, mostly Hispanics and blacks, you know, it was a show that I could relate to because even though we weren't living in projects and high-rise buildings, which you didn't see much of that in the area that I lived in, we were by the shipyards. And so it made a lot of sense to say, you know, this is an interesting show because it relates to how we live. We always found the good in what was going on, regardless of what your financial situation really was.
Absolutely. And, you know, I give Norman Lee a lot of credit for that because he was a visionist and he could see far beyond color, and he showed that in his shows. And what he touched on, which was so fantastic to me, was that, of course, he was a white guy from suburbs or whatever he was from, but what he was saying was that human nature, human beings are human. We're human. He touched on human situations in any situation, and that's what was so beautiful, and that's why Good Times to this very day is like the #1 TV show. Everywhere I go, people still watch Good Times, at least poor people, people who all colors watch Good Times. It has nothing to do with color. Mm-hmm. White people who relate to the poorer side, you know, all types of people, foreigners have come to me and said to me, you know what, I learned to speak and learn the innuendos of American life by watching Good Times. So Good Times, Good Times touched on so many different human things, and if you happen to be wealthy and not understand what it's like to be a poor person in America, watching Good Times will give you a good shot at what it was. You know what I'm saying?
And not only that, but to be able to have your chin in the air and stay proud of the fact that, hey, at least you were given, as Warren Buffett called it, you won the uterine lottery because you were born in America.
Thank you. You know,
You know, and I can see by being on your website here, you've certainly stayed busy.
Yeah, I do. I stay very, very busy because people, they demand my attention in so many areas, and I'm so happy about that because I address so many different issues in life. You know, I address being poor coming out of the project. I address being the first black female teenager ever on television. Young women come to me and say, you know, BerNadette, I wanted to be like you. You showed us an example of what it is to be a lady. Not a poor black lady, but a lady. Mm-hmm. And, you know, a young girl striving to be somebody in America. The guys come to me and say, you showed us what, we wanted in a woman and a girlfriend and all these things. You were my first girlfriend. I get emails from guys telling me, who are non-black. They said to me, I'm married right now to a black woman because of Thelma.
Mm-hmm. Well, how about that?
Yeah.
Nothing like being an indirect role model, huh?
Yeah, I'm an indirect role model, and I love it.
Now, here's it's funny because every time Good Times airs, we have it. There's a secondary channel that airs a lot of the older shows, and what's really astonishing about shows like Good Times, and a lot of the shows really around the 1970s, is they're still funny today. I mean, the humor still is relatable today. Yeah. I'll take a look at a show, for instance, in the 1980s, and it could be a situation comedy, and it seems dated, but these shows somehow really stood the test of time with the issues they were dealing with the comedy, all of it. And you kind of have to wonder, what happens? What happened there? The writing change. Yes.
I know. It's like we are the first. My father used to say, Good Times is like the first reality television. Because it was like reality scripted. You know what I mean?
Right.
And exactly that. We touched, what I love about Good Times is that it was treated not like a black show, not like a white show. It was treated like a very positive show, period. We talked about issues that all people get. We talked about addressing the black community, yes, but it's real. It wasn't like a stereotypical thing or a mockery of. It was the actual real deal, you know, and I contribute a lot of that to Esther Roll because she really wanted that. She wanted us to get a real depiction of what black America is like for us here in the 70s, 80s, and America. And so that is what we portrayed, and to this very day, it is very much relatable to especially African Americans this day. Some of them still living in the project, some of them not. But hypertension, living in the ghetto, the second grade NEET, just all, poverty, drugs, young pregnancy, alcoholism, trickery in families. It was just everything we dealt with, and I'm just so happy that I was part of that show.
Now, was there anything in the show, because I know this is how you pretty much launched your career after modeling, as you were describing earlier, that an issue came along and struck you and basically enlivened your passion to this day?
You mean anything on Good Times?
Yes.
Well, I was a dancer first. I always danced all my life since I was 5 years old. That show gave me a chance to show my talent as dance. I'm passionate about that. Things that happened to me on the show led way to other developments in my artistic life, which was in the third to the fourth season of the show, I developed something called nodules on my vocal cords, and I couldn't even speak at one point in my career here. And so I had to get that dreaded operation, and it could go one or two ways. I mean, you can come out of that with no voice. You can come out of that with a strange voice, or you can come out of that sounding normal again. I had a very good doctor, and I came back normal. Because of that, it taught me a lot of things. It quieted me down because I couldn't speak for 3 months. And what it also did was it helped develop my writing skills, because I was always, good at writing, but never like I am now. It was like poetry started to come from that silence and that quiet, and I was forced to be quiet because we didn't have Texas back then. You understand? Mm-hmm. So it It wasn't like you could write out everything you want to say. You couldn't back then. You couldn't write it all out. I mean, if you wrote it all out, you had to worry about your dictionary and you got to get the spelling right and all that other stuff. So I mean, it wasn't like we have today. You don't even have to speak. You could just write. In fact, it's amazing to me how the kids can sit across each other in a dining room or in school or whatever and talk to each other instead of talking to each other. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it made me think about texting and made me think about, wouldn't it be great if it was something I could just, type and people could get. Also, back in the day, I remember before we had, where we can go out and listen to our music on our iPods, it was no such thing as listening to your music walking down the street. And I can remember as a little kid, I'm going back now, as I can remember as a little kid, and my mother would say to me, well, BerNadette, go to the store for me right now. And I'm like, Mom, listening to my music.
Right.
And I thought when I had to go to the store, wouldn't it be great if I could listen to my music while I'm going to the store?
Mm-hmm. And then they had those earphones that you could buy that had the antennas on them, and you had to power them by batteries. That was our first, I guess, way into the carry your own music anywhere sort of a thing. But you could always get a radio in on those, yes. And then there was the boom box.
But I'm just saying, going through how much people don't understand what they have today and where we've come from and things like that. But going back to the question that you asked me, on good times, because of the nodules, it led way for my writing, which is what I do today mostly. But also I learned a lot of lessons on that show from watching professionals like Esther Roll, John Amos, Janae Dubois, and Jimmy was a comedian. He'll say it today. I'm not an actor, I'm a comedian. And also watching Ralph Carter, who was also a professional when he started on Good Times because he came from Broadway, So I was the only rookie on the scene, but I learned a lot, and I had studied at Juilliard, so I knew my craft. Mm-hmm. It's just that I had never done it professionally.
Juilliard, where Kevin Spacey comes from.
Right.
Did you ever attend class with him?
No, I attended class with William Hurt
and
Mandy Patinkin.
One of my favorite actors, William Hurt, definitely. Yeah.
Yes.
Now,
and they were older than me, but they came back to school, and they happened to be in my class.
Ah, very good. Now, when you talk about writing, I was taking a look at the fact that you have a book on relationships, best-selling book. Boy, your writing really took you somewhere, but it's best-selling, or it's Situations 101, Relationships, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What happened? How did that come out?
Well, that came out because throughout the years, I was always interested in psychology and psychiatry and all that. Well, psychology.
You had to be with J.J. Walker.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. So, because I always loved the mind and how people think and the reactions and actions of people, and I think that led me into the acting because I can analyze a character and all that. So it's all in one to me. But had I not been picked for Good Times and not gone into acting, I certainly would have gone into psychology or therapy and those types of things. I love it so much. And because it's natural for me, I became like the kind of friend that you would want to have because I was like the one that everybody can come to and ask questions about relationships, and I would give them great sound advice. Now, how I came about that, I don't even know. I remember when I was very young, I asked my mom something about relationships, and she said to me, Bern, I don't know a lot about relationships. All I had was your dad, so I don't know a lot about the world out there, but I want you to learn a lot of things about relationships. I want you to read everything that you can about love, romance, relationships. She told me that. Ah. And so I became I had books stacked up to I don't know what, and because my mom said, go ahead and do it, I read everything. I read everything I could find on relationships, and I educated myself on this stuff. So I knew a lot of stuff. So whenever I would meet anybody, and I became friends with them, and most people have relationship issues, I put my little 2 cents in, and it worked. And so I became their, go-to person. Mm-hmm. And this one person who was just not getting it, took her 3 years to get one thought about this one person that still didn't work. I said to her, I'm going to write some things down for you so that you can put it on your refrigerator so that when you can't reach your boyfriend at 3 o'clock in the morning, you don't call me and wake me up every time. So she said, okay. And I did that, and when I started to write for her, I ended up writing this whole book. It just never stopped.
I'm kind of curious, because you've read so much about relationships, and certainly you've had your view and your experiences. Do you find relationships may not seem to be taken as seriously today? It almost seems like a commodity when you consider the kind of reality shows that are out there. For instance, The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, that sort of a thing. And it seems like they're re-bringing back the "and they lived happily ever after" theme when, really relationships, they're work. They take energy and focus and time. What would you be able to share with our listeners about something like that?
Well, they just squandered it, prostituted it. It's something that it's a money maker now. But really, relationships, what we've gotten away from is the fact that the heart is the heart. And the heart still can break from a broken heart. The heart is still the same. It has never changed throughout the course of time. So when your heart loves someone, it really loves that person. The thing we've lost now is the respect for it. Mm-hmm. You can say to someone, I love you, and that person can say, I love you. But you both can love each other. But what you have to remember, which is gone now, is that you have to take care of the heart. You have to be sweet and tender to the heart. You can't be big and bold and bad and all that to the heart. Mm-hmm. Because all you're going to do is hurt the heart. Because if you hurt someone that you love because you don't understand how delicate the heart is, it's going to eventually hurt you. And see, that's what they don't understand. If you hurt someone that you love, it's going to come back and hurt you. Mm-hmm. And that's the magic of love and the magic of the heart. And even though in this day and age, if you love someone and they love you and they try to act big and bad and hurt you, or you act big and bad, you hurt them, you can't get that out of your heart. You can't get that out of your mind. It still bothers you. It bothers you because you disrespected your love. You see, and so it's going to haunt you. And that's the only thing I say about anybody in the world. If you love someone and you really love them, you must tell them that you love them. Don't hide it because you think they won't receive you well. Even if they don't receive you well, at least you have let them know that you did love them and you love them. Now, they may not understand it and it may hurt you or whatever, but trust me, if there's any love in their heart for you, they'll respect that down the line. It may take a little time. That's why love is patient and love is kind, because you got to give people a chance to, recognize what you've given them. And if they don't recognize that, eventually they'll hurt themselves. You don't have to, be revengeful when it comes to love, because it will come back on you. And that's what I've learned. If you just remember that bullseye information right there, you can really make it. It may hurt you here and there, but you'll be satisfied because you've done what your heart said to do.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to point out, too, because I hear a lot of strength in your message there, and I certainly hear the poetry. And for the men out there listening to the program, she has written a book for men only, poetry. I kind of like that.
Yes.
But getting back, first of all, just to Good Times, and why bringing this back up is, here was a show that had balance between the way men experienced and viewed the world and the way women viewed and experienced the world, and it seemed there was equal time. In other words, the characters that played your parents, the mother and the father, they equally wore the pants of the family, but generally you got the feeling that mom would decide who got to wear them.
Like all women.
Yeah, but you don't see, you hear about, how women are portrayed, this day and age, maybe even back in the 90s, and they have to do all this, but there seemed to be this reasonable balance, and, that's where you see the writing, for instance, and the reality that, for the most part, it's really like that in solid, healthy households.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. And, sensational television has ruined people's view on relationships because they think, every man wants a bitch. No, every man does not want a bitch. Every man wants a sweet lady inside. So, and every woman wants a protector, a man who loves and honors and protects and respects her. Every woman wants that. And men say, oh, no, I got to treat her like this. I got to treat her like that to get the respect. That's not respect. That's something other than everything. And we don't even know what that is these days.
Those were probably the men that didn't get hit by their shoe-throwing mothers, as Eddie Murphy would call it.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's like me, if I got out of line, my mother would smack me right upside the head, and she didn't care where we were. And it's like, okay, you learn to respect your mother, and you don't see that too much this day and age, and it's almost kind of sad in so many ways.
It is. It goes into discipline, and it goes into a lot of other things, too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people don't respect the institution of marriage anymore. I mean, men are laying babies and women are having them,
Right.
and they're not together with the person, and the person moves on to the next person, and then that baby has to grow up without a daddy, the angry mommy, or either a mommy, with the angry daddy. I mean, it's kind of like we've lost our way here, and we're producing these children who are going to grow up and be fathers and mothers and boyfriends and husbands themselves and wives themselves, and everybody's got a distorted view of things.
Mm-hmm. And
so that's where we are today. We're back at, anything goes, if you don't love me, then somebody will love me over here, and I don't care who loves me, whatever loves me. It's all mixed up, and people are still unhappy. Mm-hmm. So if you're still unhappy by doing all the everything you want to do, don't you think there's something missing here?
I think so. Now, I know that there is something that's very near and dear to your heart, and I understand that you're penning a new book, which is called The Last Night, A Caregiver's Journey. Tell us about that.
Okay. When you get a certain age, you all are going to probably be at this point one time or another, being a boomer. I had, take care of my mom and then take care of my young ones in the process. My mother developed Alzheimer's, and I was her caregiver for 8 years. Not understanding the disease and not knowing much about it, it was devastating to me. And realizing that African Americans get this disease twice as much as anybody gets the disease. And that's alarming to me because I'm African American and females get it even more, and I'm a female. And not only that, my mother had it, so I'm next in line, I feel, because I am her first child. These are not things that are not true because we don't know a lot about this disease. We don't know if it's hereditary. We don't know if it's just diet, environment, what it is. And that's what we're out here to find out so we can find an answer to this thing. I do know there are clues to this thing, like there are, factors that will lend to Alzheimer's, being high blood pressure, cholesterol. So that shows me that diet has a lot to do with it, vitamins. Vitamin D is very much attached to depression, and depression can lead into dementia, and dementia could lead into Alzheimer's. So a lot of black African Americans are low in vitamin D, and maybe that can be one of the factors why we get it more than any other culture. Maybe because of the dark skin and the fact that we are not in the sun as much as we should be, that we are more depleted than other nationalities. That could be one of the problems. But I do know that my mother is very low in vitamin D, and I know for a fact that I'm very low in vitamin D, and I'm sure if I look at other people who of color, they could be very low in vitamin D also. So vitamin D is one of the major clues to warding off Alzheimer's for African Americans. So when they say a vitamin D, if you're depleted in vitamin D, take 2,000 to 4,000, even to 6,000 milligrams of vitamin D per day. Per day. Because I don't know what it is, but we need a lot of vitamin D in our skin because it's from the sun. And we're not getting that because we're now in buildings and we're not outside and, natural. So this is the thing that we have to look into and not avoid this and understand that we are different in that way and we need vitamin D. There are other factors, involved. And I know that turmeric is a seasoning that wards off Alzheimer's. And turmeric is like a curry. And we also know that East Indians They cook curry all the time. They're the ones that get Alzheimer's the least out of all people. So the doctors are looking at turmeric as a seasoning that can be pushes away Alzheimer's or prevents it from coming on to you. So that's something that we can look into. Coconut oil, things like that. So these are little small things, and aluminum foil. Mm-hmm. Do not wrap your food in aluminum foil. Do not cook with aluminum foil because, when you take the aluminum foil off of food, you see it brown underneath there. That is the breakdown of the aluminum going into the food that we can't see. We'll eat that, and our bodies cannot digest aluminum, so it floats up to the brain. So these are things, the factors that we know we should stay away from, and we should cook only with cast iron pots because the natural iron in the pot also help us. And cast iron pots are so good for us to cook in. It will help us. It doesn't hurt us. And if you invest in them, because they are expensive, but if you invest in the proper set of cast iron pots, they will last you your whole life and beyond. So, you only have to buy them one time.
Well, I certainly have a couple of those, and I completely agree with you.
Wonderful.
It's amazing what you can do with those there. Now, I understand a new talent is emerging from you, and that's painting.
Yes.
I thought you were doing all those paintings that I've seen back in good times.
No, you didn't. You didn't think that. Ernie's on.
No, but I did love that art. I mean, you look at that kind of art, you think to yourself, that looks like a good time there. I just really enjoyed, African-American art and some great stuff. So what is it that you're painting these days? I'm painting a lot of it. I paint everything. I paint surrealistic. I paint life situations. I paint all kind of things. If you go on my website, Thelma of Good Times, you can look at my paintings. So, I have about 5 or 6 of them up there. I'm also working with a mentor now, and he's going to present my paintings in about a year and a half. So I'm working on my paintings. As soon as my book is finished, which my book will be finished in a week. I got about a week more to do on that book. I'm starting directly onto my paintings so that I can get a presentation from him in about a year and a half. And everybody's going to know about that. Mm-hmm. Well, there's certainly a lot that you're putting out there, and as you have said, we all have talent. It's just a matter of developing that talent, deciding how many talents do you want to develop.
At a time.
Yeah, and I remember there was an interesting quote that I had read, and I started living by that, and that was simply this, that if we could really live to our full potential, if we could express and experience that, we would simply astound ourselves. And I take a look at your bio here, and I say to myself, here is someone who's discovering one step at a time what her full potential is and sharing it with the world, because what else are you going to do with it, right?
Thank you. I want to do everything that God's given me. I want to be able to do something with it and put it out there. Because, they say that, the graveyard is full of talented, all your talents can go there. And I'm like, I don't want to, bring all my talents back down there. I want to give them to the world so when my day comes to exit, I have given the world everything that I have.
Well, BerNadette, I want to thank you for giving some of yourself today and sharing with a fan of Good Times from way back when. So good of a fan, in fact, that, do you remember a magazine called Dynamite?
Yeah, I do.
You do? Okay. I own the original Dynamite that had J.J. Walker on the cover.
Oh, my God. You know how valuable that's going to be?
Well, I don't have it anymore, and that's what I was just thinking, how I wished I had that, because every time I see Good Times, I keep remembering that magazine and why it was valuable also. I was big into monsters, and if anybody ever remembers the magazine, that in the back, they had a poster, a 3D poster of King Kong you mounted on the wall. And that I had until I was in my early 20s, and I'm thinking, why did I ever get rid of that?
Yeah, you don't know the value of those things. I wanted to share something with you if we have time.
We got about a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, we don't have time. I wanted to share one of my poems with you.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm going to go ahead and give you that time to do that, because I know this is for men only.
Okay. Do you want the one called Beauty or the one called The Ocean Deep?
I want the one that works best for you.
Oh, they both do.
Well, all right, then. I guess you'll have to flip a coin, won't you? Or get JJ to decide.
No, I'll do Beauty. I'll do Beauty. They say beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Well, if it is, then I behold a spirit that soars higher than anyone I've known, a heart that beats my name, a mind that connects and yet has mystery. This person and I have mountains and oceans of history. If beauty is in the eye of the beholder, then I behold a quiet gentleness, a raging strength, a desperate desire to be set free, to be all that he ever imagined he'd be. If beauty is in the eye of the beholder, then let me tell you what I see. I see my knight in shining armor waiting for me, the late-night poetry being sent, that special look only for me, the embrace that lets me know he is always there, that soul connection that creates the eternity of us. If beauty is in the eye of the beholder, then let me just say, I behold you.
And it doesn't get any better than that. Thank you so much for being on the program. And please give out your website one more time.
ThelmaofGoodTimes.com.
Thank you very much. It's been a true pleasure to have you here on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. Be sure to visit us at Beyond50Radio.com. We'll have a link there where you can find out more about what Thelma of Good Times is up to and find out how you can get involved as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 Radio program. And remember, live your day past halfway.